Okay, hi again. Just look whether it's on. Is it all? Yeah, that's better. Okay. Yes, after having just have to move to my presentation, that might be helpful.
You can give mine again.
Well, I can tell my story with your slides. We can look how that works. They occasionally do that in theatre sports, but that's not what I intended to do today. I'm sorry, this is still the wrong one. Then it should be this one. Okay. I'll tell something about upscaling lifestyle, sustainable lifestyle, using backcasting, the vision that you get from backcasting, and how that relates to macroeconomic modeling. And that's the outcome, partly the outcome of discussion and some work that has started but still has to be done further between Sjak, who's sharing this session, Sjak Smulders, and me. And we started actually with large-scale effects of sustainable lifestyle, the environmental impacts of that, and then we moved actually to the, can we see, effects of policy instruments when you use agent-based modeling. And here I will take a bit more a holistic view. What are the pictures, or what are the desires, or the wishes, or the visions that are underlying that, and that can connect them. Just look whether this works. Yeah. No, it's... Yes, okay. But before doing that, I would like to say briefly something about, well, we're on a seminar, well, focusing a bit on the green lifestyles, alternative economic models, and upscaling regional sustainability project. And we can do that, and we can gather our data because we collaborate closely with local, regional, bottom-up initiatives. And when preparing this presentation, I thought, yes, well, I would be sure that they are clearly mentioned. And this partly solved itself, because we talked already, mentioned a few times, that we collaborate with the repair cafes here in Delft, Schiedam, and The Hague, and also a bit with the Repair Cafe Foundation. But the second initiative that we're working with is a local energy cooperative, or a local energy initiative that is in The Hague, in the Bird district, Vogelwijk in Dutch, and they call themselves Vogelwijk Energetic, or Bird District Energetic. And they started, well, also since 2009, with actually taking over a wind turbine that needed or should be demolished by the utility, and they took it over, and then it ran for another 5 years. And from that they started, and they gathered and they united themselves in a society that want to make the neighborhood or the district carbon neutral, and there are about 250 members working on that or involved in that. And I will get back to the initiatives when I come to the visions and about backcasting. Then I'll just move quickly on to the backcasting. I'll do that a bit quickly for the general part. Well, backcasting is all about creating a desirable future, a desirable sustainable future in this project. Before you can look back how you could have achieved that, and then starting planning, working towards how you can move towards that future. That's an interesting, holistic way of thinking that's particularly useful when you have this so-called complex, wicked societal problems that are due to dominant trends, and when market-based solutions do not work sufficiently, when simple individual policy instruments also work insufficiently, and when you have a need for major changes. But you also need sufficiently long time horizons that allow for strong developing and implementing strong alternatives. Well, most sustainability problems are clear examples of that. And when you do that, it's very helpful for exploring possible transitions to sustainability and the pathways bringing us there. And well, some people have mentioned that, including the sociologist Anthony Giddens. There has always been an emphasis on energy from the 1970s on, but recently we see that's increasingly being applied also for consumption issues, for lifestyles and communities. And you also see some mixed approaches, and I'll call that hybridization. Well, there are some names of some abbreviations of some projects, but I won't go into detail here. I only would like to say is that thinking of the future that we would like to have, that we should want to go to, is quite different way of foresighting and scenarios than what you normally see. When you do traditional or regular forecasting, then you are more or less predicting the most likely future, and then you get business as usual scenarios. And when you're interested in certainty or what could happen, then you can explore alternative futures with exploratory scenarios like is being done at the firm Shell. But I do not want to go too much into detail into that, and I just would like to say here that backcasting is all about, well, making your vision first. You see it on the slide, on the picture on the right, and that's where you want to go, and then think or reason backwards, how could you have come there, and then working back towards the future, planning ahead. So when you do this participatory, so together with people or together with stakeholders, then there are three building blocks really important. It's making the visions, that gives you a picture of a more desirable, sustainable future, but you do it in a participatory way. You do it together with stakeholders or citizen groups or other types of stakeholders, and when you bring them together in a good way, they will communicate with each other, they will discuss with each other, and they will not only give inputs to making visions, but they will also learn from that. And if you do that in a good way, then it will give you content results, it will also give you, say, process results, learning, ideas for collaboration, ideas for follow-up and implementation, and that all together would or could or should give you an impact later on when you want to implement the ideas that are in such desirable visions. So I call that a bit sometimes the power of visions, and the power of this kind of vision building processes together with stakeholders is due to that it can give consensus on, well, shared images of the future that are supported by a network, that are no longer individual visions, but visions at a group level. And when you can achieve that, or when it's that being achieved, then this kind of visions can give guidance to these networks. So that's about what do we have to do. It also provides orientation, where do we want to go, and it's also kind of like a rhetoric boundary object. You can use it for discussion, and through this discussion it functions as a learning tool, and that may lead to higher level of learning, and these kinds of learning are related to changes in assumptions, changes in values, and changes in in the perceptions and the ideas on solutions and approaches to achieve those solutions. Well, Adrian Smith and some colleagues have called that functions of visions. They actually said it in a more detailed and a better way than I just did, but they neglect a bit the social value, the consensus value, the collaboration value, and learning effects that you can achieve. Having said this, I just move quickly on to how we deal with the backcasting in the GLAMURS project. We already talked about that we do that in 7 regions for different lifestyle categories. But what is maybe more important to mention is that we do not use the backcasting as a complete approach in which we do everything, like in transition management, but we have implemented in the project as a workshop tool, which means that there are 2 series of connected workshops in all regions that we are working. And the first series of workshops focus on developing desirable visions, so the kind of futures that you would like to see on sustainable lifestyles, but then related to economic effects or aspects. And then there are a second series of workshops that focus on developing agendas to go there and pathways how to get towards those visions. This is all, say, done in a qualitative way, a rather abstract way, together with the people in the workshops. That means that you have to process or elaborate it further after the workshops, and that we also, for quantification, feed it into the modeling work packages, the GLAMURS project. So these visions are developed at a regional level, more than at an initiative level, but the role of initiatives gets significant attention in the visions and in the discussions. And what we actually get is that we kind of co-production of knowledge together with the stakeholders that are participants to the workshops. And most of the workshops that have been organized got participants from civil society, in particular the initiatives that we are collaborating with, but also from others, participants from the government, and say researchers and experts for some additional inputs. What was important for this, but the question was a bit at the beginning of the project, what kind of visions would we like to develop on sustainable lifestyles? And what we came or found out already in the beginning is that we wanted to have some diversity there. Not only moderation, but maybe also combined with innovation. And you may think of other kinds of diversity. We also were facing the question, well, lifestyles are very individual, but how can we relate that well to economic aspects at a regional level? And for that we have worked with the distinction between sufficiency, so we moderate our consumption, we may even leave economic growth, then we get a kind of degrowth, and we contrasted that with what we called green growth, so that is the greening comes especially from eco-efficiency and green innovations. And here I'm just saying a few more things, how we contrasted the concept of sufficiency for the visions versus green growth. And given the time, I think I will not go into detail of this, because we will see it back later. So we had these two series of workshops. Most parts, actually most regions, they have been conducted by now both. And the first one focused on generating visions together, and the second one then and how do we get there? What are the kind of changes that we need? What are the kind of activities that are needed for that? What are the conditions from the economic context? And how can we elaborate or turn that into more comprehensive pathways? So I'm now actually turning to the visions for the Netherlands, just as an example, and the people that have been there in the room will recognize that. Based on the discussions that we had in this workshop and the group work that we had there, eventually we were able to define or make three visions, and one focused very much on sufficiency, so degrowth, moderating our consumption, and local communities in which these initiatives would be very important. A second vision was about individuals in an urban setting that were responsible but did as much themselves as possible, but where they couldn't do that anymore socially, then they would turn to their networks and collaborate there. And the third vision was very strongly based on green growth, based on green innovation, and still engaged active citizens. Much more is there to tell on these visions, and some of these things are being mentioned in this slide. You see on the left the three visions mentioned, and then, well, for the categories, what is the core of these visions, what are then the lifestyle aspects of that, and what other aspects, organizational or differently, could you see for this vision. And then you can see that, okay, this efficiency in the local communities was also based on that there would be a collective will to change that all, but that it would be locally rooted, but also globally connected, and as mentioned, that there would be less or reduced consumption. We related that to lifestyle effects or activities, and that included, for instance, that meat consumption would be reduced, and that exotic products from abroad would also be considered as luxuries, and that their consumption would also be reduced. And something on the organization that needs to be mentioned, that the government would become less important, because more would be done by the people themselves locally, but that we would then need supra-local authorities, something above that, to say align and communicate between the regions and the communities. I do not go into detail for the other ones, because I have to watch my time, but I only would like to say that, okay, on the one hand we have the distinction between sufficiency or degrowth versus eco-efficiency. On the other hand, there is the community focus and the individual focus, and these three visions that were generated, you can easily, we position them in those two axes. I just could move on quickly. Well, there was an example for the Netherlands. I would like to mention that similar visions, sometimes with different names or slightly different visions, were generated in the other regions of the project before turning to the economic aspects of this. Okay, so the question is then how to turn that into something, how to connect that to the economic aspects. And here we see macroeconomy, or the macroeconomic part in the project as its economic environment, and that includes things like access to job, investment, technology, also the wages, cost of living, public goods, also the infrastructure that are part of that, energy system, pollution pressure, but also that there would be threats that are kind of like barriers, that may also give opportunities, and there are opportunities that are trends in the macroeconomic environment that would facilitate lifestyle changes. For instance, environmental disasters. So we also thought that we have to take into account the macroeconomic background, and for that we worked with 4 different scenarios. And one is like business as usual, but also that there will be an economic overshoot or an environmental overshoot which will lead to a disaster, in addition to the 2 types of scenarios that relate to the visions already mentioned, so a green growth scenario and a possible degrowth scenario. Then, how do we then bring the, a starting point, a key starting point for this part is that we need to bring the future macroeconomy. We have to align that to the final stage of the visions, so that are the things where we want to go in 40 years, 30 years time, but also to how to get there, the change process, the pathway. And for both parts, it's valid that the final state, that the new macroeconomic environment in the future needs to be consistent with the vision for the lifestyles that has been developed, and the change process, the pathway, should allow for changes in the macroeconomic environment that stimulates or facilitates or allows the transition to the new lifestyle, and that will partly build on tipping points of different natures. So then we conceptualize the lifestyle visions as, we see that as they should include a new macroeconomic equilibrium, and equilibrium is very important in all kinds of economic models. And that means that given the opportunities that the agents in the model or in vision have, the question is, are they still happy with the consumption and work pattern? And if they are happy, then you can reach an equilibrium. So in that situation also counts that individuals should have no or not too many incentives to change, also comparing to what the other agents do, so that you can get a kind of stability there. This requires that the social environment has adjusted over time, but also that there is an equilibrium with the technology, with the governance and the infrastructures, and that the preferences of the agents and the people are adjusted. So it requires a lot of changes, and I normally tell it in a qualitative way, but this is a way to telling the same thing, but then by in economic terms and also connected to the economic modeling. Also would say that there is not one single equilibrium possible, but there are several ones possible. And on top of that, for every equilibrium, there will also be multiple pathways possible. So, this is not the right slide at this thing, so I think I just go on, and here you see the same 3 visions that were generated in the workshops in the Netherlands. So again, it's efficiency, responsible individuals in an urban setting, and the green growth through innovation, but now from preliminary qualitative macroeconomic assessment, which says something about the facilitating factors, the threats, and the required changes. And I think I don't have enough time to go into that, so I must leave it here without really explaining what is all meant. But I can only say that, okay, no, I think I should leave it here. And then I try to...
There will be some clarifying questions.
You have one there.
Yes, there's one in the back, or in the middle.
Hi, Jack. Okay, now I understand a bit better what backcasting is, but there's one thing I still do not understand. I mean, there are many processes in the economy which are endogenous, you know. So, I mean, your idea of you choose a vision, then you go back, isn't it a bit mechanicistic, you know? So think of the rebound effect. You think, okay, we make energy more efficient, but then people respond, you know, in a way you wouldn't expect. Just an example. So how do you deal with it? Maybe, I'm sure there is one way.
Yeah. Well, I wouldn't call it mechanistic, but I would like to call it holistic, and it provides us the ideas and the narratives of alternatives where we also could move towards. And then indeed you can, well, making the visions like putting your desires or the narratives of possible alternative futures, and indeed if you do the elaboration of that and what are the actions, that is quite a bit instrumental, I agree with that. But it gives you only a pathway to go, so it's, what is in there is a bit similar to what economic incentives that are being used in policy instruments and in other places. But it gives you an alternative for ongoing pathways or developments which may help you to bring to more agreeable or more desirable futures. And that can be helpful to policymakers, that they are not the single choice that they expect to do, but there are alternatives to that. And I think I would like to leave it here.